What's up, Elite Soccer Academy family? And in today's video, we're going to be discussing how you as a parent can make the best decision for your child and the personal trainer that you're going into, ruling out certain red flags in the trainer, or even something to look for when it comes to doing your research in a trainer to see if they are the right trainer for your child. We'll give you a couple of tips and advices on how to make this decision for your child. So stick around and watch the rest of the video. Tip number one, you want to make sure that you're listing these three when it comes to your choice. And the first one is choosing a trainer based off popularity. So if you see a trainer who's got about 200,000 followers, 300,000 followers, you got to make sure you're doing your research and understanding whether they're bringing true testimonials and true results to their children, or if they're just working with high-level elite trainers or players that are already getting results but are just looking flashy for the video, right? You want to make sure you're keeping this into consideration when it comes to finding the trainer for you, because that trainer might not be available. That trainer might not give you the same type of attention that your child needs, the same coaching points, because they're just not used to it, or they're just used to coaching top-level players who already do everything well on their own, and for the most part just need a little bit more accountability. So keep this in mind when it comes to choosing a player or a coach, based on the popularity, right? You want to make sure that this coach is right for you, that they're holding your child accountable if your child is in a different level as opposed to those higher level players. Now, on the contrary, we have coaches who are giving the cheapest possible alternative and package for your child, right? And at the same time, you got to think to yourself, right? Cheap isn't always efficient. Cheap isn't always the best possible result, right? Cheap is cheap for a reason, and you want to make sure that the trainer who is giving you these cheap options is going to be somewhat knowledgeable in their expertise, right? When it comes to private training, cheap results won't get you the best results, but you got to think to yourself, is this going to be the best possible decision for your child, right? If it is cheap, you got to ask yourself, why is it cheap? Why is this trainer giving you the cheap option? Are they just starting off? Are they just getting into the training world? And if so, are you ready to invest into a cheap trainer, so to speak? And the reason for this is because if you're not super serious about getting good results, well, then maybe a cheap option will be great for you, right? But if you're looking for something more on the guaranteed side of results, then you definitely want to keep that into consideration, because at the end of the day, the ones that guarantee results might not be the cheapest options. So just another little tip to keep into consideration when it comes to making your decision for a trainer. And the last one for this particular situation, right, is choosing a trainer that is truly knowledgeable in what they are doing, right, and what they're teaching your child, right? A lot of trainers might just put on a front about exactly what it is that they've accomplished, either as a player or former player, or even as a coach, right? You want to do some research, because if a coach is telling you that they've played in these high-level elite games and competitions like the World Cup, and then they've coached here and there, you really want to fact check that, right? A lot of ways you can do this is just Googling the trainer that has made these statements or has posted this online. You want to make sure that what they're saying is very truthful and impactful to your child and the decision that they're making, because at the end of the day, if you're training with, or your child is training with, a coach who is just not knowledgeable, on top of that, you lose a little bit of that trust, because they said they've coached here, they've played here and there. You want to make sure that it's legitimate, because if it's not, then you're just investing into a trainer who might make things look great, right, on paper, might make things look great in their training sessions, but in reality, it possibly is just not working, right? So you want to keep this one. This is the biggest, most impactful one out of the three that I just listed, because if you're not training with a coach who just doesn't know what they're doing, or just hasn't been coached and on the proper ways to develop children, then you won't know exactly how to get the results as a coach. The next one is, how do you know what a good trainer looks like, right? And there's many ways that you can determine this, right? But I'll list 3 to 4 different ways that you know a good trainer is right for your child and what to look for. So number one, is the trainer vocal? Is it trainer knowledgeable? Is the trainer committed to tailoring sessions to you, right? Those are just 3 of the options that you can look for. But let's touch up on the first one, right? Vocal. Is the trainer vocal? Is the trainer communicating with you as a parent? Is the trainer communicating effectively and positively to the child that's getting the actual training, right? Because you don't want a trainer who's gonna just be vocal, but yelling out a ton of negative insults or negative remarks and comments onto your child's training sessions, right? Especially in a one-on-one. You don't want to go through that awkward moment of just hearing these negative comments about how the child is not performing in the training session, especially if it's all alone. It just comes up to a little bit more pressure, comes up a little bit more tough to really dive deep as a child when it comes to this type of trainer, right? So you want to look for one that's vocal, but in a very positive sense, encouraging, right? Because private training is strictly about the child, and it's a smaller group setting, whether it's a one-on-one or a small group private training. But those are going to be super beneficial to your child's confidence, because a lot of the kids who go to private training are often lacking confidence and need that 1v1 attention from a coach who's going to uplift that confidence, right? And you want to do so in a verbal, using that vocal component as a coach to uplift this type of player and impact them through their journey. And the second one is just more so on the knowledge of the coach, right? You want to make sure that they're knowledgeable on the biomechanics, knowledgeable about the developmental stages, not just that, but the efficiency of training drills, right? Does this particular footwork and agility drill work? And if so, can you prove it? Can you consistently do it over a lengthy period of time and actually generate results from it, right? A lot of trainers just come up with different drills and make it look very good, make it look flashy, but at the end of the day, maybe it leads to injuries. Maybe it just doesn't lead to the same amount of efficiency that you might think, right? So you want to make sure that the trainer is knowledgeable, that they know what they're doing, that they have a particular resume that works, whether it's through their experience as a player or possibly as results in other player transformations that they've gone through, right? Another way you can determine this is more so like, are they really intentional about growing as a coach, whether it's starting at the grassroots level, coaching licenses, building their way up to the D, C, B, and A licenses, and then pro license at the end, right? Are they putting in the effort and investment into growing into their knowledge as well? Because even younger trainers and older trainers need to grow consistently on their own. They need to learn from their experiences as a coach to better improve and help other players as well, right? So you want to make sure that your trainer is knowledgeable in their expertise. Now next, their ability to be able to connect with your child is probably going to be one of the most overlooked, underrated, yet impactful types of trainers to look for, right? If your child is just going to training and a coach barely talks to the child, barely can get them to, actively involve in a training session, you're going to have difficulty connecting with that child. And that child's just not going to come to training very happy and excited to learn, to grow as a player. So you want to make sure that when you're looking for this particular trainer, that they're very friendly and very, motivating and encouraging. Again, this ties back to the vocal component, right? Can they be positive and uplifting from the very beginning, right? And it doesn't just have to come down to just being friendly, but can you connect, right? Can you connect with the child, and so that they're not just feeling like they're driving to, training for 20, 30 minutes and then going through just drills and then not really growing from it, right? As the coach, can you verbally connect and get more out of that child? Guys, now the next one is super important, right? These are red flags to look for in a trainer, right? And a couple of those details, as I mentioned before, is making very flashy videos and flashy exercises that look very tough and look like they're very painful, but really not doing much, right? And so one way that you can tell that this is a red flag is, and I've seen this before in other trainers, right, is that your child is 10 years old and they're lifting super heavy weights, whether it's a dumbbell or even a barbell, which is crazy to me. But if your child is 10 years old lifting a barbell overhead and doing squats and shoulder presses, these are super red flags to look for in a trainer, because your child at 10 years old, I guarantee, is not ready to lift weights. And I don't care what anyone else decides to say about, they're strong and ready, they could do it, they can handle it. No, your child is just not ready to lift weights at 10 years old. They haven't gone through the significant growth changes as a young individual to be able to tolerate these types of loads, because weightlifting is a completely different load than the load you are getting from training itself on the field, right? And at the end of the day, you do not want your child to break his back at 10 years old trying to lift things because they just haven't learned the exact way to lift weights yet. And this takes time from a true professional who knows how to correctly lift weight and can work on injury prevention at the end of the day, right? So this is a huge red flag. Understanding that if your child is lifting weights at the inappropriate age, be careful with that. You don't want the trainer to be training your child. I guarantee you that you don't want it to go through significant injuries. Now, the next type of trainer you don't want to have your child work with is more so a trainer who never ever asks about your child's goals and things that they're striving for, right? If your child doesn't really have anything to look forward to when it comes to the trainer because they haven't asked, then how do they know what they're improving on? How do they know what to work on in that particular session coming up, right? And if the coach doesn't ask this toward the student or towards your child, they won't know exactly how to connect with them. They won't know exactly what to work on with them. They'll just come, create a session on their own, but not really tailor it to your child's needs. And this is important when it comes to choosing a private trainer, right? Because at the end of the day, private training is tailored to your child. Private training is private for a reason. If it were more generic, if it were more broad in the sense of training sessions, you could just stick to club training for that, right? You could just do whatever the coach thinks that the team needs, and you wouldn't need a private trainer, right? But if you're looking for a private trainer, this is the ideal moment to have a private trainer, tailor things to your child's needs, and it's private for a reason, right? So if the coach is not asking for any type of goals that your child is looking to receive, or even you as a parent, right? The child doesn't know, or if the coach doesn't know exactly what you as a parent are looking for in your child and what your child actually truly needs, then why would you go with that trainer, right? So ask yourself those questions, right? And make sure that you're looking into those details from the trainer itself, because a coach who doesn't know what to work with ultimately doesn't know what to help with, right? So that's another thing to look for. And overall, at the end of the day, if your coach that you're looking into and have been training with for a while is not the type of coach to constantly self-improve, right? Is constantly going out to these crazy parties and posting stories about it, do you really want to work with a trainer like that, right? You want to make sure that the trainer you are working with is professional, constantly growing on a weekly basis, whether it's them posting something about a soccer game that they just finished analyzing, them posting about a child that's just been working with them and is getting true results, right? That's the type of trainer you should look for, one that's truly going to be professional about everything that they're doing. And on top of that, as a coach, growing. Because if the coach is growing in their knowledge and their expertise, then you know that the work that they're going to bring to your child is ultimately going to work as well, right? So this is another red flag to look for, is if your coach is just not professional in what they do. And lastly, how to choose the right fit for your child, right? So there's a lot of different types of trainers that you might notice in the soccer world. A couple of these different types of trainers might consist of a fitness trainer, right? More so like a physical and strength and conditioning type of trainer. Another coach you might go through is more of a significant shooting type of coach, right? This is more for players who are going to be working on their shooting. You might notice that there's other trainers that work on skills, more so a skills trainer. And, there's just so many different types of trainers that you might come across, right? And ultimately, you have to choose what your child needs, right? As a parent, you've been evaluating your child. You know that they need some sort of help, but maybe you don't know exactly what to get them help with, right? Maybe you want to look for a trainer who works on all those types of skills, right? Maybe it's different, right, for that trainer. At the end of the day, you need to find out what philosophy they are based out of, and what they tend to work with more, right? This is a good way for you to determine whether that trainer is good for your child, right? If you're more so just working on like every aspect of the game, and then there's different generic types of trainers that you might come across, maybe not those that specialize in like the fitness or specialize in the shooting or specialize in the skill, right? So at that point, you as a parent have to make the decision yourself. Another way to choose a trainer is more so, are they working with kids your age, right? Or your child's age? Are they working with kids your child's age? Right. So what I mean by this is there's a lot of trainers in the modern day, social media and all this that are working with strictly collegiate players or working with strictly professional athletes, right? These are very high level trainers, right? And I'm assuming that they are so because they're working with these high level players. But if your child is just new to training, right, or new to soccer, this particular trainer might not be it for you, right? They coach a completely different type of group of kids or adults, right? And you got to keep in mind if this is really what you're looking for, because it might also be difficult to book with that trainer. That trainer might not be available for you on a weekly basis because they have so many other clients that they're working with, right? So do you really want to work with a trainer like that, one that's not going to be available to train your kid on a weekly basis, right? A couple of things to look into. Good. And so what a good trainer should offer, right? You want to make sure that the trainer is offering a certain level of consistency, right? Off the bat, right? Is your child able to train with that trainer on a weekly basis, whether it's 1 day a week, 2 days a week, right? You really don't even need to do more than that unless you are in the off season and you're thinking of investing a little bit more. But at the end of the day, 1 day a week is at the bare minimum the best that you can do with a trainer. and if they are available every week to do so, right? So in terms of availability, you should be looking into that when it comes to choosing a good trainer, because if your trainer is not there available, ultimately the child cannot learn, right? They cannot compound the level of learning that they're getting from the week prior, on the week prior, and the week prior, right? You want to make sure that everything that they're compounding is being put to use for your child, especially if your child is new. They need to be able to sharpen up these things on a weekly basis. And in doing so, you can only do that with a trainer who is available. Does the trainer guarantee progress or growth, right? And what I mean by this is that, is the trainer going to be looking at everything that you're doing and comparing that to everything that you're looking to get by the end of the program? And is it going to have a certain level of periodized type of training? Periodized just training means that everything that you're doing is getting harder as it goes, right? Every type of training drill you come to has to be more and more challenging as your child gets better, so that it could constantly help them develop and help them challenge themselves even more. This is important. If your trainer is just doing the same types of drills every week, then maybe it's not going to work, right? Maybe it's just not going to help challenge your child into growing like they should be, right? And at the end of the day, you want to invest in a trainer who is doing more than just the training on the field, right? Is the trainer able to supply you as a parent and your child with knowledge about the importance of nutrition, the importance about recovery, strength and conditioning, at-home workouts, right? These are all things that you want your private trainer to be able to offer you a little bit more of, right? Because the team coach might just focus on the team and what the team needs, right? But your individual development often comes from days that you're not doing any training, either with the private trainer or with your team. So what you're doing on your off days, your rest days, is equally as important as what you're doing on the field. I would argue that majority of the results you're going to get come from off the field. And if you apply it onto the field, then it just makes your on-field training that much more efficient and that much more impactful. So make sure that your trainer is offering you a little bit more than just on the field. What are they applying to you off the field as well? So that wraps it up, guys. So if you have had an experience with a bad trainer, so to speak, make sure you comment the word bad in the comments and tell a little bit about what experience you had with your coach, right? Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Comment anything else that you might like or want to see in terms of covering some education when it comes to soccer training on and off the field. I'll see you guys on the next one.